Okay, listen. The wounds have healed, right? We can go back and talk about the fact that this young team losing in the finals might not be the worst thing in the world, right? Let's do that right now.
You are Locked On Spurs, your daily San Antonio Spurs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to Locked On Spurs. My name is Matthew Tynan. Thank you so much for making us a part of your day. On today's show, in case you were wondering how silly this show is, how unserious this show is, that's right. You're reading that graphic correctly if you're watching on YouTube. That says Victor Wembanyama on the hot seat. We are bringing Victor in for a performance review, and let me tell you, it will be thorough. That might take up 2 segments. And by the way, we've got some odds and ends, some little things to mention here and there if we have a little bit more space. But first, like I said at the top, now that the wounds have healed, now that we are officially closing in on about a month and a half removed from the Spurs losing in the NBA Finals to the New York Knicks, I think that the wounds have healed to the point where we can all sort of take a step back and look at everything and look, I'm gonna say this selfishly from a storytelling perspective. I think that it's okay that the Spurs lost in the NBA Finals. Yeah, there's the oh, they got time, they're so young, all this kind of stuff, yada yada yada. No, I think it's a better story than just flying directly to the top. Not having to go through all the pain, not having to go through the gauntlet that basically every team in NBA history has had to go through on its way to the top. To me, it just makes for a better story. But I'm going to talk about this from, a learning perspective for a young team. That when you're talking about an organization that has goals of, in the Victor Wembanyama era, and I guess if you want to call it sort of the applied to it, some subgenres of the Steph Castle era, the Dylan Harper era. We all know it's under the Victor Wembanyama era umbrella, but maybe this is the new version of the Big Three. Who's to say? Different day and age. We all know the difficulties that teams these days are having just staying together for any prolonged period of time. But for an organization whose goal is to make this thing another decade-plus long run, I would posit to you, dear listener, that losing in the way that they did, experiencing the success along the way that they did, understanding that, look, we can do this. These are all young players who had never been in this specific situation before, and they can say confidently, we already know that we have what it takes to get to the finals, to reach the very, very summit of the NBA. But they can also say at this point, okay, we know that there is another level. It's a motivation that perhaps they would not have had otherwise in terms of sustaining that over the course of, this is just me positing, by the way. This is just a theory that getting to the very top, it would have been too easy. The lessons learned along the way wouldn't have been nearly the same as what they are currently experiencing. And I even go back to the days of the 2013-14 Spurs. And that's a team that had been there before, right? That's a team that had experience. But to look at what they went through and that new iteration having to bounce back to recover, to pick up the slack where they dropped it the year prior, the season prior, it reminds me in a way of this, obviously 2 different timelines, but this is a team that is having to learn all these lessons on the fly. And not only is it a better story to me, but these are the types of lessons that they're learning now at a young age at the most competitive levels of the postseason. They're learning this now. They won't have to learn later because they already reached the very end of the road and fell short. It was that final hurdle that they couldn't get over. And that's going to serve them over the long haul. You can talk about the fuel, you can talk about the fire, the energy, the sort of redemption type of stuff if you want to. But really, this is just a learning lesson experienced at such a young age that they may not have been able to experience otherwise, at least not until later. But now they got this out of the way. There was no, hey, you lose in the first round. That's kind of, you go from not making the playoffs to losing in the first round. It's a normal trajectory. Okay, from there, you go and you lose in the second round. Again, how many years down the road that gets you. Here, they learned how to get all the way through. And just a reminder that they beat the defending champions on their home floor in a Game 7 of the Western Conference Finals. Like, that's incredibly impressive. They only have one more step to make before they've tasted like what the full realization of that accomplishment, winning a title. It's going to take a long time to get back there. As Victor said, 100 more games of this. I have to wrap my head around the fact that we have to play a whole nother 100 games to get back to where we are now. So it's going to take a while. But in the end, this is the kind of suffering, losing 4-1 to the New York Knicks, that makes the rest of it worth it. That makes it taste all that much better in the end. I'm going to bring in Tyler, the producer here, who, by the way, Tyler, welcome back. Welcome back.
Thank
after a couple of days last week. You're on the road a little bit. Is this something that people can appreciate? Like the stuff that I just said? Or is it like, nope, we wanted to get this thing done right away. We wanted to go right to the top, accomplish the thing that nobody ever accomplishes in the NBA. Do you buy what I'm selling? Or is this a better story if they just go win it all right off the bat?
Is it a better story? I guess that depends on if you like David and Goliath, if you're rooting for David or Goliath, how you see on whether that's a better story. I generally
who was David and who was Goliath in the finals?
I mean, the Knicks had one of the best postseasons in the history of the game, and
true,
had a bunch of 30-year-olds. I feel like they were
but the Spurs were favored in the series.
Yeah, which I said this at the time. I think we're the more talented team, but I think the Knicks are the better basketball team. And I think that panned out in the finals.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think as a fan, it would have been great to, win and keep winning. Who doesn't want to have a Celtics run of winning 11 in a row and just have that as a fan for the,
Let me ask this real quick. What would have been a better storyline? The Spurs winning in the 2013 finals, and then potentially not making it back the next year. Like there was an energy and a fuel that they had in losing that 2013 finals, like without question.
Yeah.
Seeing that up close and personal, like seeing that sort of redemption and that revenge, everything that was sort of fueling them behind the scenes, I don't know if that would have been there the next season. And I thought, as I looked back and still look back, that storyline of losing in as heartbreaking a fashion as they did in 2013, and then coming back the next year, wiping the floor with Miami, breaking up the big three, all of that, to me, like that was the better storyline than it would have been had they won in 2013.
It was a pretty cool redemption arc, and the championship was just kind of the icing on the cake of that season, because the entire season was like just the caliber of basketball that the Spurs played in 2014 all season long was
so
much fun to watch. that was a redemption arc for that team, I think, because they had just lost the championship, but they were a team that had already won 4, right? Or at least Tim Duncan had won 4.
Yeah.
And most of the guys on the team had won the other 3 with him.
Yeah.
So I don't think looking like what happened to the Spurs this season is what happens to every young team. It just happened later in the postseason than it normally does, right? Normally, the young team that's up and coming and really talented gets to the second round, maybe they get knocked out and they take those lumps and they learn from it.
Yeah.
Later on down the line, the Spurs just decided to do it in the finals instead of a few series earlier.
Yeah, the thing that they continued to build the expectations as the season went on, as the postseason won, and like it's inevitable when you make it that far. The expectations are just going to build and build and build. They
overperformed last season, and I'm now wondering if it's impossible for them to do anything other than underperform because they've just set the bar astronomically high for themselves.
Well, they didn't win the championship, though.
No, I mean, yeah, but what I mean by that is like now that's the expectation.
Yeah.
Winning the championship is now the expectation. So if you don't,
I see what you're saying.
Okay,
mean? So anything short of the finals, basically, you're designating that as.
I think a large swath of fans, both Spurs
failure.
and NBA, will designate that as a failure. It's not that black and white to me, but you've now set the bar. You've just set yourself up to get hater comments all the time, which is fine. It's part of being an NBA star.
You know what? Let's keep talking about this. How about we cut to break and be right back? Today's episode is brought to you by Indeed Sponsored Jobs. When workplace chaos hits and you need the right hire, Indeed Sponsored Jobs helps connect employers with candidates who match specific needs like skills, certifications, and location, so you spend less time searching and more time finding the right fit. In the minute or so I've been talking to you, companies like yours have made 27 hires on Indeed. That's according to Indeed data worldwide. Usually the biggest difference isn't one person doing more work. It's having somebody who knows what they're doing and makes everything run smoothly. Spend less time searching and more time interviewing quality candidates. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, you can rely on Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on Locked On Spurs. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions do apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. All right, we are back. And just a reminder, if you are new to the show, if you're just enjoying it, please leave us a like. Share it with other people who you think might enjoy it. Review, rate, subscribe, all of the above. If you're an audio-only listener, go ahead and click that little auto-download button. It really does a lot to help us out in this competitive online world. This world of where everybody's at the trough. Everybody's got a podcast. We've really enjoyed being part of that podcast world, eating from that trough over the last 4 months or so. Tyler, let's wrap this conversation up, because obviously we got to get to the really important Victor Wembanyama performance review.
Yeah. But
anyway, I think I interrupted you where you were going with that. But where would you like to wrap this thing up? Because I find it like, on the whole, I just think that this is a very valuable learning lesson. And that I do believe that tasting, sort of going through that pain first, then rather than having to like deal with it later, and who knows, they may continue to go through pain. I don't want to put that on them, but we don't know. Like, I don't ever want to make it seem like I'm taking anything for granted. You are there. You made it to the finals. Youth, age, whatever, be damned. You made it there. You fell short, but to me, like I said, I just think that this is the storyline and the story arc that is that it allows for more storytelling to come. Like as I've said, so I don't know. I'm here for it. I actually, but I didn't say it on this podcast, and that's why I said I hope that the wounds are healed now, because there was a part of me that, yeah, sure, of course it would have been fun for San Antonio to win, but there was also a part of me that was like, man, this is all happening so fast. It's not supposed to be like this. Like let's draw this thing out a little bit more. I hate to admit that, but I am.
Yeah, I mean, I was talking about how Spurs fans and NBA fans generally probably look now at this team and say, if you don't win a championship, it's a failure.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really view it that way, but I do wonder, like, is that the mindset of the guys on this team now? Is it championship or bust from here on out?
Yeah.
And in a sense, it's always championship or bust, right? If you're a competitive person, but what do they actually view as what will be successful going into the future?
Yeah, and Casey Vieira on last week's squad show was asking something like similar, if they don't win a title, is it a failure? And Devin and I were both saying, like, no, I don't think so. Like, yeah. I think that Victor would have a very nuanced way of probably looking at it. And I kind of invoked that press conference from a couple of years ago, when the Bucks were knocked out of the postseason and Giannis was asked about failure and he had a really long answer about, this isn't failure. So it's always in the eye of the beholder, I guess. But,
sure.
When you're in such a competitive league now, and again, this is to someone who's going to counter this with like, well, you were there, you needed to get the job done. That was a great chance to get the job done.
It was, but
you're right.
My counter to that would be, look at how the Spurs won their 5 championships. They didn't do it in a spurt of like 3 and 5 years or 5 and 7 or anything like that. They won 5 championships over the course of 15 years. There was a spot in there where it was like 3 like every 5
years. Yeah, 3 and 5 years. Yeah.
But they were competitive throughout that entire stretch. Like, yeah,
they were. I mean, for sure. And like they did something that basically nobody does, which win a title in like one player in Tim Duncan winning a title in 3 separate decades, which is crazy.
Yeah.
So there's longevity there, even though we're going way down a rabbit hole at this point, because we do got to get to Victor, but like Kawhi Leonard was the saving grace. It's so crazy to look back at all that, man. What a time. What a time. What a storyline with Kawhi, especially now looking at what he's dealing with out there right now.
A lot of Spurs fans feeling very vindicated right now, I would probably say.
Yep. I agree. Okay, you know what? It's time for hot seat. It's time for performance review, and it is Victor Wembanyama's turn. We have made you all wait long enough for the Victor Wembanyama performance review.
A real tall seat, but he's in it.
Yeah, it's like a giant bar stool, basically. All right, Victor Wembanyama, Defensive Player of the Year. First time that award has ever been unanimous. The youngest player, right, to ever win the award, I believe. Youngest player, and the first time it was ever unanimous. Huge accomplishment. It is difficult to look. I think that because of and I'm kind of going back to the old days of the Defensive Player of the Year award when they would really like it went to guys who blocked a lot of shots, who might not have even necessarily been that great of a defender. Like you talk about a Marcus Camby who was winning the award while Tim Duncan was playing. Still the most criminal. Yes, I know. Still criminal that Tim Duncan never won the award.
Yes.
But I think that sometimes it can be
the best rim protector by numbers. Sure.
Well, no, I was gonna say that like it can sometimes be overlooked where he can cover up for defensive mistakes that even he made along the way, and like he's going to continue to become a better defensive player. simply by virtue of the fact that he's going to be more experienced being the quarterback of a defense. He's going to, not only is he going to get better as a defender, but he's going to make the team around him better. And I think that we can really sort of dig into a lot of that. We can even nitpick and say, like, we saw there were times in the finals where he got blown by a little bit, like maybe don't extend too far defensively, yada, yada, yada. But, like, we're not going to dive in too much to the defensive side of things because he was just a one-man wrecking crew on that side of the ball.
I mean, I'm not qualified to give these guys advice about anything, but I'm definitely not qualified to tell Victor Wembanyama how to play defense.
Well, we are not supposed to be revealing those kind of things on this show, Tyler, that we are unqualified to be giving performance reviews to NBA players. But yes, specifically on the defensive side of no, sure. it sure isn't. But specifically on the defensive side of the ball, look, Victor, you're doing all right. You're doing all right.
Pretty good.
We should actually invent a completely new stat called the Nope, like simply because of you.
It's gonna take a whole lot of caffeine, but maybe I can be convinced to try to track those this season. If I don't do it in real time, though, I'll never catch up. So
yeah,
we'll see.
Well, yeah, the fact that, like,
he led the league in blocks in his second season, and he only played 46 games.
Well, the cool thing, yeah, I know, and here's the thing though, is like guys have not stopped, but they've started taking fewer shots when he's in the area. That's why the whole Nope stat. I think the best way that you can sort of the best way to sort of measure it, because with what we have available. Mm-hmm. And I know that there were people tracking this kind of stuff, or they began to, and I'm guessing this upcoming season there's going to be more attention paid to that. But the best way, at least one of the best ways that I saw, was that you're basically measuring the frequency of rim attempts or even paint attempts, if you want to, by an offense relative to their average, or you could even say like relative when Victor is on the court relative to their average, and just see the percentage drop that they experience whenever Victor Wembanyama is on the court relative to what they just shoot on average, the frequency that they shoot on average. And it's just a preposterous drop. He's just he makes people just completely change their mind, completely alters the offense. Everybody knew this already. Final segment is going to be all about Victor Wembanyama on the offensive end. Let's get to it. All right, Tyler, I do think there are some things to nitpick.
Absolutely.
On the offensive side of the ball for Victor Wembanyama. We were going over some stats prior to the podcast. What caught your eye? Like, what is your general sense and feeling whenever you think about where Victor Wembanyama's improvement areas lie? Like, what is your general thought process when this topic specifically is introduced?
Yeah, I think for me, it's shot efficiency and just getting to know like where his spots are on the floor and being very intentional about working his way to those spots. We have a little bit of data that we pulled. For example, his unguarded catch and shoot jumpers, he shoots at 46.8%, 45% from the 3-point line.
Yeah.
That's really good. That's really good. And most of those obviously came out from the 3-point line. Now, the trick, of course, is getting him unguarded catch and shoot shots, because he shoots them at 28% when he's guarded, which surprised me a lot, actually.
Yeah, it surprised me too. We've made the jokes in the past before where it's like he can't even see the guy flying out at him. Like there is no such thing as a guarded Victor 3. Well, it kind of turns out that there is, at least by the way that synergy data portrays a guarded jumper. He is affected by guys flying out at him. And whether or not that's one of those things where he takes a beat, like if a guy's flying out at him, he takes a beat and tries to sidestep, because the dribble jumper stuff isn't nearly as efficient.
Right.
But you do wonder, especially as look, this is still going to be a team that's going to be very guard oriented. There's going to be a lot of drive and kick, pick and pop action type of stuff. So I don't know. I think that is something to watch. And
Well, and here's another two stats to think about. His mid-range efficiency is 42%. And on jump shots overall, he shoots 36.5.
yeah,
That's not great. That's very, I mean, the mid-range is very mid at 42%. And at 36.5 on jump shots overall, you definitely, I think, want to see that much, much higher if he's going to be taking them with any sort of frequency.
well, and I think that you know, I think so often we talk about and we've done it multiple times on this podcast. I think just during this off season, it's like, what is the go-to move going to be? And I'd sometimes push back on the idea that anyone has to have a go-to move. You know, something that you absolutely have to go to, or that you have to have in your bag to be able to go to. I do think, though, that when you look over the course of time, the span of time, like everyone, or at least the best, like tend to have their comfort zones. It's Steph Curry may be an outlier. That guy just shoots it from anywhere, and it seems like he's going to be able to gonna hit it. Like there is no, Steph Curry's in the corner. Like he's worse from the corner than he is from the 45 degree or from the top of the key or whatever. To me, it's like I tend to think of Victor in through the lens of like having a comfortability, especially when he's a guy who obviously they're going to be relying on to have the ball in his hands late in games, but it's being comfortable in certain situations, knowing how to handle certain situations, and like maybe getting more comfortable with the dribble pull-up stuff. I think that we've pointed to the areas from elbow to elbow where not only does he seem more comfortable in those areas, but it's also more conducive to creating more offense around him if he's operating from that area. Whereas it's not like he's too far from the basket where if he starts to put the ball on the floor, he's going to get swarmed, or he's going to have to go through multiple lines of defense, or it's not like he's on the block where it's just, he doesn't have as many angles around him, like the 100 or maybe even like 270 degrees of vision or whatever. So I guess it's like it's finding comfort in certain zones, but also just becoming more proficient in the ways that you get your shots. And to me, like a big part of that is the dribble pull-up game.
Yeah, I think a lot of this ties into some of the playmaking stuff I'd like to see more from him, and that's just decide sooner. Like, decide if you're going to drive, shoot, pass sooner. Be confident in those decisions. Hold the ball less. Move the ball more. I think from a playmaking standpoint for Victor too, I'd like to see him do more of like. He's great at passing guys who are open. He's great at that.
Yeah.
What I'd like to see more of is like try to move the defense to set your teammate up to get their shot and get them going.
So you're like early types of offense.
Yes.
And I think that maybe there is something to that in the sense of like one of the areas that really stuck out to me in the finals with San Antonio was that when their initial actions didn't work. Basically, when it kind of fell apart with their first choice, sometimes into their secondary actions, they kind of resorted or defaulted to sort of a bad ISO or maybe a rush pick and roll, something. It didn't feel like the optionality was there. Like whenever New York shut down the initial action, they kind of did their job. And, I do think that at some point along the way, San Antonio is going to expect that Victor is going to develop more of the one-on-one type of stuff. They bring in a guy like Tobias Harris, who is very capable and efficient in those one-on-one types of situations. But, like, just going back to, like, Victor Wembanyama shot 34.3% on dribble jumpers this year or this past season, and that's just not going to cut it in general.
Not if you're going to take him with any sort of volume, for sure.
Yeah, so I don't know. I think that I wonder, and we're going to get a much better look once the season starts, obviously, and we also have to keep in mind that this is a young team that's still trying to, like, learning together and learning how to play with one another. And I do think that there is something to when you talk about creating early offense or having sort of immediate counters to when the defenses react, just understanding what the guy next to you is going to do in certain situations. I still think that there's, like, a giant learning curve there ahead for this team, just considering how little time it's spent together.
Well, and a lot of our offensive is like one-on-one or transition, like a lot of transition. When that broke down, I think where we really struggled in the postseason was half-court offense, and that's going to be real important.
The things that worked really well, for sure, transition. We know that. And whether that's Vic rim running or Vic trailing from three, it all worked really well. It's going to be like, how frequently can you get him as a roll man? What we saw against the Knicks is that the Spurs were deadly when he was able to roll to the rim, but when they're tagging him up and pushing him around and he's not creating that gravitational pull toward the rim, and everybody is able to sort of push the Spurs away from the basket, like, that's when they got in trouble. So whatever needs to be done from a secondary action perspective is going to be critical. And it can't always simply be, because I think that it fell into his hands a lot, Victor getting the ball and kind of going one-on-one in situations that were not advantageous for him. And I think that hurt his efficiency a lot. It's going to be great along the way if he refines his game to be able to get to his spots, to find the shots that he prefers, that he's more comfortable with. But I do believe that it's going to take more of a concerted effort from the group to be able to flow in and out. Like, if one action doesn't work, okay, great. That's fine. Flow into the next one, and go from there. Again, this is such a young team, man. They're all learning from one another, learning how to play with one another, learning their own games, like individual development. It's tying it all the way back to the top, man. Young team. They learned along the way in the postseason that they're not going to be able to do this strictly on talent, and they're going to have to continue to develop. That's why it's a better story. That's why it's a good thing that they didn't win, that they didn't win already. Just straight to the top, shooting straight to the top. You gotta get a taste of your own blood first, Tyler. That's the life lesson here. Gotta get punched in the mouth. Gotta learn your lessons before you make it all the way to the top. Thank you all so much for listening to me ramble on about this. It's summertime, friends. Oh, my goodness. Thank you for making Locked On Spurs your first listen, where we cover the San Antonio Spurs every single day with some degrees of effectiveness. Some are better than others. Today was a fun one.
We're great all the time, Matthew.
All the time. Do us and yourselves a favor. Smash that subscribe button. So you get notified about every episode whenever, and whether we go live or whether it's premiere, whatever. You can find me on Twitter at Matthew_Tynan, and you can find both of us over at the Corporate Knowledge Newsletter. That's MatthewTynan.substack.com. Tyler, where can they find you?
Well, as you said, writing over the Corporate Knowledge Newsletter, as well as my own Substack at thevideoman.substack.com. I'm also over on Instagram at TylerPrinceFilm and running the Locked On Spurs account.
Right on. Well, for your second listen, if you want more NBA coverage, head on over to Locked On NBA. You can find it on YouTube, wherever you get podcasts. Also, check back with us tomorrow. Look, Some stuff kind of popped up in the news that the mayor of San Antonio is looking to send this arena thing to another vote. We are efforting to get a guest on to talk about that very subject. But until then, for Tyler Prince, my name is Matthew Tynan. Here's Victor Wembanyama.
Appreciate y'all. See y'all. Never.